Throughout the series, we saw many instances of Tony having bizarre dreams, as we saw this early in the series and continued right up until the series' final season. Lots of fans think that the dream sequences are boring, and some fans even skip right through them. However, the dreams that Tony and other characters have throughout the show are an integral part of the series' plot and character development. In Season 2, Episode 13, while suffering from food poisoning, Tony's dream helps him realize that one of his most loyal members of his crew and one of his most dearest friends in Big Pussy is a rat. And later on, when Tony is in a conflict with New York and his cousin Tony Blundetto, he has a dream that foreshadows what lies ahead for his cousin. But in the second episode of Season 6, titled Join the Club, we are introduced to a series of dreams that take place while Tony is in a coma, as a result of getting shot by his Uncle Junior in the first episode of Season 6. Instantly in this episode, we realize that this isn't the Tony that we have all come to know and love. He's not the murderer, liar, cheater, and con artist that we've seen throughout the series. In fact, in this episode, that's not who he is at all. This version of Tony that we see in his coma dream is a sales rep for Precision Optics, and we also notice right away that his heavy New Jersey accent is completely gone. So instantly, David Chase steers us in a direction that indicates that this Tony is completely different than what we are accustomed to seeing. In an early therapy session between Tony and Dr. Melfi, the two discuss the concepts of dreams, what they mean, what they don't mean, what they represent, etc.
What do you think the dream means?
Can't you just tell me what the fucking thing means? I mean, you obviously know.
I don't obviously know. I didn't have the dream. The meaning is elicited through verbalization.
So we can see that dreams have always been a part of Tony's life. The dream has Tony in San Diego for a conference, and while at a bar, he accidentally grabs the wrong briefcase. And as he looks inside it, he realizes that none of his identification, papers, or anything inside the briefcase belongs to him, and that it actually belongs to a man named Kevin Finnerty, who Tony eerily resembles on Finnerty's driver's license. The briefcase narrative is fascinating, as it almost is a way of David Chase telling us that someone else took the life that Tony was supposed to have. That Kevin Finnerty had the life that Tony dreamed of, a life that consisted of not being in the mafia, a life that was stress-free, and a life that consisted of his family members not trying to kill him. As Tony even states that his entire life is in his briefcase.
Try not to worry, Tom.
My whole life's in that case.
In many ways, the briefcase is a MacGuffin, which in film is an object or a device that is necessary to the plot and motivation of the characters. As we can see this in Pulp Fiction with the briefcase as well, and with the Maltese Falcon statue in the Maltese Falcon film. A lot has been said about who Finnerty is and what he represents in this episode. While some fans think the entire Finnerty representation means nothing and that Tony simply just grabbed the wrong briefcase, however, I believe, and many others too, think that Finnerty actually represents who and what Tony could have been had he not joined the Mafia. Throughout these series of dream sequences that take place over a few episodes, there is plenty of symbolism that is purposely done, and it's not all just a mere coincidence. There seems to be this heavy notion that Tony maybe wanted to go off and venture into the world of retail sales, as he stressed this numerous times throughout the series, specifically in the world of patio furniture.
Maybe I'll be selling patio furniture in San Diego or whatever.
And throughout the dreams, we learn that this version of Tony that we are introduced to did attain that profession in the past.
Tony, you never did tell us how you made the jump from selling patio furniture to Precision Optics.
We notice that everything about this Tony is different. His voice, job title, family life, and children, as we hear different childish voices that differ from the voices of Meadow and AJ.
Hi, you reached the Sopranos. Leave a message. Bye.
However, parts of the narcissistic Tony that we know are still there throughout the dreams, as we do see him lie and use Kevin Finnerty's ID to get into a hotel room, and we see him cheat on his wife. Seeing Tony Soprano, this big bad mafioso who is used to solving issues with anger and ruthlessness, to suddenly being converted into an ordinary civilian is interesting. He is completely lost and powerless at what is in front of him and having someone else's briefcase. He's afraid to commit fraud and acts like a tattletale when the monks strike Tony in the face. And even his wife sounds completely different. At times throughout the episode, it's almost as if we hear 3 different female voices speaking to Tony on the phone. And these 3 voices are Carmela, Charmaine, and Gloria.
So his briefcase is at Bally too? Or I'll call Derna to see if the company can help. Tone, how you doing?
Finnerty didn't call her, did he?
No, I'd have let you know right away.
Throughout the series and the Coma dream sequences, Tony can be seen constantly worrying about what lies ahead for his future.
Now we die.
Why are you so interested in all this?
And my wife told me, I woke up at one point, I said, who am I? Where am I going?
As there is heavy symbolism throughout the Coma dreams that symbolize Tony's life and death struggle, as Tony can be seen on the verge of dying when the operator table lights shine into his eyes. And there is a heavy presence of life and death. Even the bartender mentions it.
Tell me about Costa Mesa. Nice place to live?
Around here? It's dead.
This version of Tony is completely lost. While he has a sense of direction thanks to the monks that meet him, and from the Finnerty family reunion letter that he receives under his door, he's completely lost. Whether if it's the lingering theme of life and death that Tony constantly wonders about, he is constantly in a circle of limbo. He cannot get home, couldn't get money wired from his wife, and couldn't seduce the lady that he met at the bar. Sadly, this version of Tony was stuck and there was no way out.
I'm 46 years old. I mean, who am I? Where am I going?
When Tony looks off into the window of his hotel room, we see this beam of light rotating in a circular motion. This represents Tony's heart rate, as well as his opportunity to get out of his coma. The beam of light represents his life. And as he stares off and almost picks up the phone to call home one last time, which by the way represents Carmela and his family, we hear a Moby song with the lyrics, "Where were you when I was lonesome? Locked away with freezing cold. Someone flying, only stolen. I can't tell this light's so old. I don't want to swim the ocean, I don't want to fight the tide. I don't want to swim forever, when it's cold, I'd like to die. What was that, my sweet nothing? I can't hear you through the fog. If I holler, let me go. If I falter, let me know. I don't want to swim forever, I don't want to fight the tide. I don't want to swim the ocean, when it's cold, I'd like to die." These lyrics play while he stares at the horizon, worrying about his future. And by the end of the episode, Tony is tired of fighting and simply wants to die. This shows that even when Tony is in his coma, a time where his family would love to have him back, that he would rather stay in that life than make a connection to his real life back with Carmela and the toxic mafia world that hangs over his head. This is a powerful scenery and imagery in this episode done by David Chase. It shows that Tony is happier in this life than he is in the life of crime with the millions of dollars that he has made. This shows how toxic the mafia life can become, and possibly how maybe after all, Tony never really wanted to join the mafia. Later on in the episode, we watch as Tony takes a fall down a flight of stairs. As a result, the doctor tells him that he has been pre-diagnosed with Alzheimer's. This is interesting because there is a lot of speculation surrounding this narrative. There certainly is the connection between Tony and Alzheimer's, as we watched his mother go through a series of forgetfulness acts after the attempted assassination on her own son. And we saw Uncle Junior slowly and sadly suffer from Alzheimer's himself. The one doctor also indicated that Tony could suffer from brain damage from his coma, as this may be foreshadowing that Tony himself will actually fall to Alzheimer's later on in life. There's also the fact that Uncle Junior, a man who tried to kill Tony twice, is still haunting him from inside his coma. And we see the same with a lady resembling his mother Livia at the Finnerty family reunion and in the Calling All Cars dream. The dark spots on Tony's brain could also be the stressful life that the mafia puts on Tony. What's interesting here is how throughout the series, we certainly know that Tony is obsessed with the loyalty, honor, dignity, togetherness, and love that comes with family. Not just with his mafia family, but with his actual family as well. And with the 2 attempts on his life that have come from family members, Tony still can't come to terms with himself that his family tried to betray him.
Let me tell you something, AJ. I don't care how close you are. In the end, your friends are gonna let you down. Family. They're the only ones you can depend on.
And this is much like the mafia having informants. that result in Tony getting betrayed as well. When Tony arrives at the Finnerty family reunion, we are greeted by an old, worn-down wooden home. At first glance, this home just seems to be like a traditional country home. But on a much closer look, we've seen this home before. First, when Tony has his dream and calling all cars, where we see a similar silhouette greeting him at the door that resembles his mother. And then when he kills his cousin Tony at Uncle Pat's farm. And at the end of his coma, Tony is greeted by the same man he killed at the very same home, his cousin Tony. It's here where his deceased cousin wants to attain his briefcase, but Tony won't let him have it. As we know from earlier on in this episode, he states that his entire life is in his briefcase. Tony's briefcase is heavy, which is a metaphor for how heavy the mafia life weighs on its members such as Tony, but also towards its family members like Carmela and their children. As Tony's lifestyle has resulted in many nights at the hospital and fearful moments regarding Tony's life. Lots of fans think that this moment is actually Tony going into heaven, as Tony Blundetto states that business is not allowed inside. And in this scene, it's extremely windy, just like what we saw when Tony was almost assassinated back in season 1, where wind symbolizes death. However, this is actually Tony going into the gates of hell. We watch as Tony doesn't proceed further thanks to his daughter's voice that calls him back to life. I'm so glad that I finally got to make a video about Tony's coma dream. The coma dream showcased who Tony needs to come to terms with, whether if it's himself before he comes out of the coma or with his Uncle Jr. It's quite possible that the dream sequences happened to make Tony a better individual once he came out of his coma, and we do see this later on in the series. After all, it was Tony who volunteered to watch Uncle Jr. over Janice and Bobby, and this is the reason why he got shot. We realize thanks to these episodes that Tony Soprano is who he is. And like we learned with Christopher and Tony B, normal life isn't an option in reality. Tony's life has portrayed the normality of a normal life, and it seems to be far out of reach. This recalls back to what Christopher said earlier on in the series, that the regularness of life is too hard on an individual in society. Tony realizes in the dreams that being a nobody is no fun, and that Tony Soprano was ultimately born to be a gangster. There's thousands of interpretations out there, and I would love to hear your thoughts about Tony's coma dream. Let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.